There once was a stick figure who thought too much. Not in a dramatic way, not in a loud way, just constantly, about everything. About what to say, about what not to say. About which subject to choose, about what that choice would mean. About what that meaning would mean, and what that meaning would mean after that. His brain was never quiet, even when the room was. At first, it wasn't a problem. Thinking is good. Thinking means you care. Thinking means you want to do well, but his thinking didn't stop at caring. It'd multiply if he got 72% on a test. He didn't just think, that's okay, he thought. Why wasn't it 80? If it's not 80, can I still take maths? If I can't take maths, does that mean I can't study engineering? Do I even want engineering? What if I regret not choosing it? What if I regret regretting it? Soon, the mark wasn't just a mark. It was a prediction of his entire future. When it came time to choose subjects, he didn't sleep. Maths or maths lit. Science or geography. Business studies or history. Each option felt like a fork in the road, but in his mind, it wasn't a fork, it was a cliff. Choose wrong, and everything falls apart. He researched, watched videos, asked friends, asked teachers, made pros and cons lists. Then made pros and cons lists about the pros and cons lists, and still, he couldn't choose. Because what if there was a better option he hadn't considered yet? Overthinking doesn't look dramatic, it looks like standing still. His friends chose their subjects, submitted forms, moved on. He stared at the paper. 10 hovering, heart racing. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't careless. He was scared. Because choosing meant committing. And committing meant risking being wrong. So he waited, and waited, and waited. But waiting didn't make it clearer. It just made him more tired. It wasn't just subjects, it was friendships too. If someone didn't reply for 2 hours, he didn't think, they're busy, he thought. Did I say something wrong? Was my joke weird? Should I not have sent that message? Should I send another one, or would that look desperate? By the time the friend replied normally, he was already emotionally exhausted from a conversation that only happened in his head. Marks weren't numbers to him, they were identity labels. If he did well, relief. If he didn't, spiral. Maybe I'm not smart. Maybe everyone else is ahead. Maybe I'm falling behind. He compared constantly, quietly, scrolling through other people's achievements. Assuming they were confident, assuming they were certain, assuming they weren't thinking like this. He thought everyone else had clarity, except him. One afternoon, he sat at his desk, books open, pen in hand, and couldn't start, not because he didn't understand the work, but because he was thinking about, what if I fail? What if this subject isn't right? What if I'm wasting time? What if I should switch? What if switching is worse? The noise in his head got so loud that his body stopped moving. He just stared, frozen, and for the first time, he realized something. Thinking wasn't helping anymore. It was trapping him. Overthinking feels productive. It feels responsible. It feels like you're preventing mistakes. But he noticed something strange. All his thinking hadn't actually moved him forward. It hadn't chosen the subject. It hadn't improved the mark. It hadn't fixed the friendship. It had just made him tired. He realized clarity wasn't coming from thinking more. It was coming from something else, something scarier, action. So he tried something small, not dramatic, not life-changing, just small. He circled one subject choice. Not because he was 100% sure, but because it felt slightly more right than the others. Then he submitted the form, heart pounding, waiting for regret. But something surprising happened. The world didn't collapse. He didn't feel perfectly calm, but he felt lighter. Because the decision was made, he started noticing a pattern. Every time he acted, the noise reduced. When he studied instead of worrying about studying, he understood more. When he asked a teacher for help instead of overanalyzing his confusion, he got answers. When he sent the message instead of rewriting it 10 times, the conversation flowed. Action didn't remove uncertainty, but it reduced imagination, and imagination had been his biggest amplifier. He began to understand something deeper. He didn't need perfect certainty. He needed self-trust. Self-trust is quiet. It says, I might not know everything, but I can handle what happens next. That's different from perfection. Perfection says, don't move until you're sure. Self-trust says, move Adjust later if you're choosing subjects, or stressing about marks, or comparing yourself constantly. Listen carefully. You are not behind. You are not broken. And you are not the only one thinking like this. Most students are overthinking quietly. They just don't show it. Subject choices matter. But they are not prison doors. They are starting points. You can pivot. You can bridge. You can change direction later. Your first choice is not your final identity. And one mark does not predict your entire future. The anxious student still thinks. He didn't become someone else. He didn't stop caring. But now, when a thought multiplies, he notices it. When anxiety starts building stories, he pauses. And instead of solving every possible future, he solves the next small step. Open the book, send the email, submit the form, ask the question, small action, small clarity. And something beautiful happens. The thought bubbles no longer control him. They float, but they don't freeze him. The anxious student who thought too much didn't become fearless. He became brave in motion. He learned that clarity doesn't arrive before action. It arrives because of action. And maybe, if you see yourself in him, you don't need to think less, you just need to move a little more. One step, even if it's imperfect, because overthinking builds imaginary futures. But action builds real ones, and real ones, they're much quieter, much clearer, and much kinder than the stories in your head.